Hello, all you spry tubers, twitchers, and pod people out there. Welcome to the Could You Do It Better podcast, where director, artist, and the behind-the-scenes awesomeness known as Sesh, and the writing and directing sensation known as Maria discuss popular television shows and movies and answer the always controversial question of, could you do it better? Today, we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 3 of Ryan Condal's House of the Dragon television series, based upon George R.R. Martin's novel, Fire and Blood. And as for me, I'm Jonathan the Intern, and unlike our two experts, have no industry experience whatsoever. In other words, I'm much like Rhaena Targaryen. I'm a completely underdeveloped background character, I'm relegated to the role of maidservant, and in the case everything gets burnt down due to our own negligent behavior, I'm fully responsible and liable for the damages and cleaning up the mess. And now, to Sesh and Maria. Woo! We've got a spicy one today, folks. Some dissension in the ranks on this episode, so this should be a fun time for at least two of the members on here. The third one, not so much. But this is the Season 2, Episode 3, House of the Dragon TV series recap. And as such, this will contain spoilers throughout. So, if you haven't watched this episode and don't want to hear spoilers before you do, please feel free to put us on mute as you watch the episode, then rewatch our show afterwards, because that's how you double those view counts. And now, on to the recap as mandated by our legal department. Kicking off the episode is an awesome change to the embroidery intro, now featuring decapitation and hanging by cross-stitching. That's an extra point in the ratings for this episode as far as I'm concerned. But we begin in earnest with an argument between farming communities over boundary lines, and if this sounds familiar, yes, this is a callback to the early Season 1 small council meeting issue that teenage Rhaenyra and Alicent got in a tiff about. The knight on one side pledged to Rhaenyra dares the knight on the other side pledge to Aegon to kill him. And in a matter of 5 seconds of directorial magic and not having budget for a proper fight scene, everyone is dead. Well, at least this foreshadowing is slightly less blatant than the bloody joust taking place in a uterus-shaped arena intercut with Rhaenyra's mom being bisected during childbirth in Season 1. So we've got that going for us. But to Dragonstone, where Eric and Eric are buried together holding hands, as Rhaenys tries convincing Rhaenyra that a violent war is coming, but that Alicent is the key to stopping it, and Rhaenyra needs to reach out to her. Rhaenyra, having watched this show and having absolutely no clue what Rhaenys is talking about, is like, nah, I left her on red, that cancerous backstabbing cunt. It's okay. It's okay. Millie Alcock is Australian. That's normal lexicon. It's perfectly fine. Over to King's Landing, where Sir Lord Commander Han Criston Cole is charged with getting the bickering small council to come up with a military plan. He decides to impetuously ride with Aemon and a small group of men to overtake Harrenhal, because that's the key to the war. Aegon, having no idea what a king does, wants to join them in battle on his dragon, and Alicent is upset her sex slave would decide to run away from her. Back to Dragonstone, where Mysaria is thanked by Rhaenyra for saving her life and is rewarded with a place in Rhaenyra's court. In other news, obvious writing is obvious. Rhaenyra then meets with Rhaena, who appears to be Daemon's daughter, to have her take Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys, who must be Rhaenyra's kids, to the Vale. Then, if I understand correctly, take them to Pentos to be their new mother? Holy character introductions, Batman! I feel like speed dating is a 35-year relationship compared to this. It's at this point, Daemon arrives via dragon at a primarily deserted and decrepit Harrenhal. He eventually makes it to their keep, where he meets Simon Strong, who claims they have no love for Larys there because he burned the only likable characters on the show. And then repeats what Rhaena said earlier this episode, almost word for word verbatim. Back to King's Landing, where Alicent's brother, Sir Gawain, yes, that's his name, arrives just in time to ride off with Criston into battle, but not before Criston asks for Alicent's favor along with the padding she uses to fill out the bust of her dress. I thought you'd like that one, yes.
That's pretty good.
Riveting, energetic music carries us out. It must be time for battle. No, never mind. Back to a dour small council meeting at Dragonstone, where they want to douse the encroaching Kristen-led regiment with dragonfire. Logical. Rhaenyra wants to know what progress Daemon has made, but he apparently is out of satellite range right now, so she wants to wait until he gets her an army. Her council responds by saying, hey, listen, for like the past 3 months, you haven't made any strategic decisions whatsoever. Maybe you might want to sit this one out and let us actually do something to turn the tide in this war to put you on the throne? Maybe? And Rhaenyra's like, that be treason, y'all, then walks off. While Rhaenys is left to say that she's the granddaughter of the wisest king who ever lived. I mean, I guess, but she's also the daughter of the bumbling, incompetent Viserys that caused all these problems, so... Anyway, Rhaenyra then says goodbye to her children and Rhaena, telling her she's the hope for their future, and then repeated what she said earlier in this episode to her once again, verbatim. Was there a bet in the writer's room on how many times they could get away with using the copy and paste feature this episode? Because this episode is somehow more repetitive than most modern pop songs. But back to King's Landing, where Helena tells Alicent she's sad. Alicent says the functional equivalent of, that sucks, kiddo. And Helena says she forgives her mom for ho-ho-hoing it up with the hired security who, if he was actually doing his job, might have been able to stop her child from getting beheaded. Now, in 99.9% of shows, this would ring so incredibly hollow. But we're talking about relying on Sir Criston actually guarding something. And at that point, you might as well save yourself some time and just rub your neck back and forth on a chainsaw. Meanwhile, Aegon is getting dressed in his great-granddaddy's finest frock of war, when in strolls Larys, who tells him there are rumors flying around that he was tricked into going to war so his mom and brother could rule the Iron Throne together. And despite there being no logic whatsoever in that rumor, and the fact that Aegon is an impulsive hothead who just cares about vengeance for his son, he was convinced from that to stay home and make Larys his master of whispers. Sure. This allows for the completely reasonable and logically seamless transition of Aegon going to the local bed and brothel to help his squire lose his virginity, where someone is claiming to be a secret Targaryen, and Aemon is having his nightly motherly comforting session. All right, well, Aegon drunkenly embarrasses him, so Aemon angrily walks out full frontal with a myriad of sex acts going on around him because HBO nudity quota. Over to Rhaenyra, mournfully playing with her kids' miniatures and putting them away in the toy chest that doubles as her mailbox for important letters from King's Landing, because who wouldn't? And she reads Alicent's letter. Bum, bum, bum. Quick cut. Over to the merry adventures of Sir Criston, whose party of knights are spotted in a wide open field by Baela. Sir Criston is able to save them because he told them to ride fast. And Sir Gawain is thankful. Baela reports back to Rhaenyra, and her council wonders, will Rhaenyra send reinforcements to Harrenhal? Will she destroy Cole's regiment by dragonfire? Now that war is imminent, will we finally be given our battle plan? Rhaenyra takes several beats, and like most executives reviewing negative employee feedback surveys responds, I've decided to take all your suggestions into consideration, and walks away without any additional comment to collect her annual bonus as her employees stare at her in disbelief. Over to Harrenhal, where Daemon is sleepwalking while having a vivid wet dream of a teenage Rhaenyra restitching up Jaehaerys' head, telling him she always cleans up his messes.
Oh, no.
It's true. Daemon, hey, I didn't write this episode. I'm going to make this abundantly clear later.
Oh.
Okay.
Daemon wakes up at the foot of a weirwood tree with an onlooking Yennefer from The Witcher telling him he is going to die here, then walks away. Back to Rhaenyra, who seeks counsel from Mysaria on how to see Alicent face to face and perhaps avoid a war. Mysaria tells her to get in a fishing boat like Daemon, dressed like a sister of the faith, and meet Alicent when she accepts communion. Rhaenyra makes it to the Sept somehow and discusses with Alicent Daddy's dying wishes at knife point. Alicent realizes that she might have made just a little oopsie-doopsie in her interpretation of Viserys's final words to her, and that Rhaenyra might not have ordered the death of her grandson. Episode ends with Alicent entrenching herself in her position, that it's too late in the broadcasting schedule to make such a major arc change, and that Rhaenyra needs to get lost or die. This episode is brought to you by Fleeter Sneakers LLC. You know, a good pair of shoes gets you to wherever you want to go. On the court, to the party, into the action. But a great pair of shoes gets you out of there even faster. Here at Fleeter Sneakers LLC, these kicks ain't only proven to improve your speed, agility, and vertical with its cutting-edge elastomeric material, it also has a state-of-the-art AI system that automatically engages our patented double afterburner escape protocol technology whenever you're in danger. So whether your friend just did something stupid and you need an explosive twin burst of nitro to get you out of there before the sirens get closer, or whether you need a controlled burn to walk away whenever you're asked to make a decision like Rhaenyra, or even need to back away from your blind date because you accidentally matched with Larys, Fleeter Sneakers will make you always out of reach. That's Fleeter Sneakers LLC, where you don't ride the dragon, you outrun it. Back to you, Sesh and Maria.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's begin with our first question of the night. We'll see how this goes. Number one, do you think having different writers each episode has helped or hindered the show, and why? We are going to begin with Jonathan.
As you all know, I'm not an expert. I'm just an intern. So over the past several years, I've become an advocate for having a team of writers on a series. You know, not only is there just so much work and rewrites that need to be put into even a single episode, let alone a season's worth of episodes, but you also get the added benefit of being able to bounce ideas off one another, get alternative viewpoints and intriguing ideas to help aid character development, flow, progression, and, even creative arcs that you just wouldn't be available to you if you were going at it alone. Having successful working partnerships as writers is just so incredibly important and can create magnificent pieces of work, all while taking some stress and workload away from any individual writer. Of course, the caveat to that is that if you don't have an actual well-connected writing team, and instead basically employ a group of individual writers who don't communicate with one another effectively or understand the mapping of the characters, you get an absolute disaster, rife with character and continuity issues that makes a series borderline unwatchable. And perhaps I'm being harsh, but that was on full display this episode. You have multiple characters who haven't even been properly introduced or developed popping up throughout the episode, basically randomly. You have characters who aren't acting or behaving even remotely consistently with the prior episode. You have lines repeated practically verbatim by different characters. And you have nonsensical, almost random cuts and transitions, making the series in this episode specifically a completely disjointed mess. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than I felt this episode had so many writing, transition, pacing, character issues that I can't believe this made it to air in the form it did. It honestly blows my mind. So while having multiple writers should help, I think plain and simply it has hindered the series to an extremely advanced and flat out unacceptable degree. And that's not just this episode. This is based on every single episode we've had so far. It just feels like they don't even know what the characters are, or they read the character sheet and they don't understand. I don't get it. I just do not get what I just saw in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels like each episode has had a different style and a different interpretation of who the characters are and what they would do. It is frustrating as someone watching because I don't get to enjoy exploring the motivations and psyche of the characters when I know they aren't written enough in a consistent way. So maybe there are just so many moving parts that certain things get lost in translation. I'm not sure. It just feels there is a constant running, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. You know, when I see the showrunner notes at the end of each episode, I think it would be better with one main writer who has the help of other writers to achieve the legwork of his or her main goals. Without it feels like many things get lost, and each episode is almost a start over for many of the characters.
Yeah, I share that sentiment. Like, it should go well, but it never seems to jive with the show. Like, I feel like almost all the characters are just, like, at best moody. And honestly, like, I can't pinpoint what their reactions would be to anything. Like, we knew people were in the world of trouble after, like, Cersei's walk of shame.
Right.
I don't feel like there's a lot of teamwork on the team of writers. Like, it's more so just taking down the orders of what needs to happen in a scene to get to the next scene, and the writers fill in the blanks from those instructions. And sometimes the characters have like an outburst, sometimes they hold it in. Cole is always an example of this. I thought he was going to enjoy the role of the Hand more than he has been. Like, he even seemed to enjoy it with the one time he was in the room and speaking as the Hand. And he seemed to be, backing off on his nightly duties, not reprimanding those two other knights that were sitting down on the job. But he immediately leaves to lead a mission himself. That's a bad idea as the Hand of the King, and that's a bad idea as the King's Guard. Not like I was expecting him to do smart things, but he has no problem delegating, and he has no problem delegating tasks. We saw that last episode. Like, like sending off Eric to go get killed was even more pointless now. That it just like doesn't amount to anything. Like, they had a good shot showing he like felt bad about sending them off and like what he had done, and I could understand, but then I would think he wouldn't want to be Hand, or that he wouldn't want to leave a troop of knights on a mission if he felt like he had made such a grievous mistake. He knew it was a crap idea. He knew he was going to go send him to his grave. Like, but now he feels bad about it. Like, it's just so many inconsistencies for so many characters all the time.
Yeah, no, you guys make some good and sad points about this. Our next question tonight is: was Aegon's character and choices consistent in this episode compared to the previous? Sesh, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I guess enough time has passed? Question mark? Maybe no, like it doesn't seem like he's acting out of anger anymore. What is consistent is that he's easily manipulated, especially when it has to do with about the way he appears, what kind of king he is, in particular, if he's not appearing like he's a strong king. Like, he showed how easily he can be manipulated, which that tracks at least. So, like, and he was a jerk to his younger brother while being a drunken bro. I mean, so I guess, yeah, mostly he kind of was consistent. But the new thing was seeing him second guess himself from being so close to making such a big mistake. That's different and a little nice to see. It can add a little depth. Not like we like him anyways, though. But again, it's just that it's a new thing we haven't really seen him do, so a little less consistent. But I guess, everyone has to have their first time contemplating at some point.
Oh, your first time.
Yeah, well, that does put it in a nicer light than what I was saying. That's good.
He contemplated for his first time, guys, as king.
Yeah,
He's growing up.
Put it in the scrapbook. Absolutely. For me, I don't get it. I'm sorry. Like, last episode, Aegon was furious and grieving over the loss of his son. A son, sorry about that, a son that the showrunners made it appear he truly loved more than anything in the world. And Aegon swore vengeance, wanting to kill everyone loyal to Rhaenyra. He fired Otto over it. because he desired absolute bloodshed and destruction. And now, Amir, you said enough time. This was 24 hours later.
Not enough.
He fired Otto. He installed Cole as the hand. This was Cole's first day on the job as hand. This is 24 hours. You know, he's I'm sorry, but yeah, 24 hours later, and suddenly he's a calm, collected, happy-go-lucky Aegon again, who decides not to fly into battle for vengeance, all because Larys suggests to him that there are rumors that his mother and brother want to send him to battle so they can rule? What sense does that make when you've written Aegon as an impulsive, volatile, stubborn person who's been shown on several occasions? You say he can be easily manipulated. Fine, but he isn't easily persuaded once he makes up his mind on something. And you combine that with the fact that he doesn't care about being king. They've said that multiple times. And that up until now, his brother and mother are the two people he actually trusts. And he knows that his brother and his mom aren't on good terms. Plus, again, just 24 hours earlier, Aegon hung all the rat catchers in the city based solely on the word one of them murdered his son. Why wouldn't he press Larys for the names of every person who is saying this rumor and do the same, calling them conspirers, you know? But no, we're not done yet. You then write Aegon to, instead of going to war, take his squire out to the brothel on a merry quest to lose the boy's virginity, filled with happy drunkenness, debauchery, and some jocular boorish behavior? What the hell are you doing? I mean, so extremely little this episode makes sense for this character, not only from a continuity standpoint over the length of the series, but also over the length of this episode, that I just have trouble understanding how nobody reviewing the script spoke up to say, hey, you know, just a note, you know, this character depiction isn't making any logical sense. Let's maybe workshop some changes to some of these scenes. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. You might say there are single moments in this episode where Aegon lines up with an episode 4 episodes ago, but that's it. There was no consistency as far as I saw.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. I might get thrown out the window. I don't know. I actually think they are. Looking back to when, I guess I am jumping back a few episodes. Looking back to when Aegon was running from being king, he was seen as wishy-washy, full of insecurities, masked with sadistic tendencies. He also didn't really care about his kids as he used them in fights for the hell of it.
True.
Well, now we see him still being wishy-washy and knowing deep down he's not actually mad enough to properly avenge his son's death if his enemies aren't tied down for him. So he'll just settle with poking at people he perceives as weaker than him at the town bar and illicit love house. I think this episode fits Aegon's character better than the last 2 episodes. So I was actually on board with that a little bit.
You know, I'd take that viewpoint. You know, yeah, he'd poke down. And he's insecure. You're right there. You are right.
All right, I'll let him simmer in that for a little while and get to the next question of this episode. This episode expanded the world from just focusing on the 2 families to seeing a little bit of the kingdom and its strife. Was its approach effective at giving greater meaning and focus to the main character struggles? Sesh, do you want to start us off?
I may be an outlier here too. I don't know. We'll see. I kind of liked it actually, but I didn't love it as a whole. Like, it was another scene I felt that was maybe too short, even though the episode was longer than normal. like I'd like to have seen like a little bit more character shown, like just something that made this event more tragic. And like I'm sad the cow is dead more than anything else. Like it's it's a good example of like how silly the fighting and war over like little feuds can be. Like it was missing something for itself though. Like I don't want to call it development since like they all die immediately, but like it really was like there just needed to be like something, like it just needed to have something more than just to be referenced for the other characters in the story. Like, you know, maybe seeing like a son and his boy tending to a farm or something. Like it would have been nice to see like each side, why each side chose their side's true king, you know, or like even our main characters could have just like they just could have gotten away with just referencing the scene and we would have understood the point of it. We didn't actually need to see any of this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they needed to introduce some of these characters earlier, or at least at the round table, or connected to the main characters more intimately. It felt well intentioned, but a lot of those events could have been more elaborated or turned into its own episode for more impact. That would help me feel more connected to the stakes of these battles. Right now, I still feel pretty ambivalent toward the two feuding peoples. If maybe we saw their character better and how they interact with the king's family first, like you said, made us feel a kinship with one or the other, I would have more stakes in the outcome. I think it's important for us to feel attached to the outcome because right now it just feels like it just feels like two dragon families made a few oopsies and now the world has to burn. And it just doesn't make for high drama. I mean, the Ulf character, however you pronounce his name, should have been introduced first with interacting or being shunned by one of his kin before going around the taverns. So I'm not sitting here wondering, why are they wasting a one shot on a total stranger who doesn't do anything of consequence inside this episode?
Yep.
Yeah, I am in agreement. Like, I think it certainly should have. It definitely should have. And I was excited for seeing how such a minor and petty issue could spark a violent battle, especially with how this called back to the season 1 small council meeting, where this issue was basically viewed as a minor squabble that Teen Rhaenyra and Alicent argued about, really immaturely, at least from Alicent's part. You know,
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those well set up and not obvious moments that drew people into Game of Thrones. I mean, I've been asking for this now for, I think, what is it, 13 episodes? And they finally set something up, and it was great. I was psyched, for maybe another battle fight scene that had parallels to Battle of the Bastards. It wouldn't be the same, obviously. It would sprawl over to the rest of the world, but maybe something similar, an epic battle, something of that sort. And then the scene ended with a skip to the end where you just see a ton of bodies and battle-scarred land. And that's been this series in a nutshell. The few times it builds to something that might excite you and keep you interested, the showrunners just refuse to deliver anything of substance. And listen, I realize battle scenes are intense. They are costly. They are difficult to shoot. You have like 8 million extras out there, all the costumes, But when you dedicate a good 7 minutes of screen time to people slowly walking around, also with no payoff, forget greater meaning. I'm just trying to figure out what's even the point of this episode, other than the expository lines copy pasted throughout the episode meant to hit the viewers of the show with a sledgehammer. It's like the showrunners don't trust their viewing audience as capable of discerning anything that isn't spoon-fed to them, repeated multiple times, and then like beaten into them. And then they say, this is important. And it's like, okay. And then it happens. And they're like, job done.
Do you think maybe it's because they don't trust that the watchers are actually watching the show carefully enough? Like, they feel like their show is boring, and so they have to see things.
They're just all they just skip. They're just all like, we did the payoff, and it's like, no. You hit a plot point, you didn't do a payoff.
The only thing that I can think of is that maybe this is just like such a small segment of the book or text from George R.R. Martin's universe that they are left with creating something out of this, and they decided to go about it the wrong way. Instead of saying okay and doing a deep dive into each one of these characters and building these characters up, specific scenes for these characters to thrive in, to grow, such that you can go ahead and learn from them, they went about it looking at it from the history book and timeline perspective, where they're like, okay, we know what our timeline is. We know exactly what happens. Here we go. We need to have this. Oh, this is huge. This is a big event. Let's put this here. Let's go ahead and do that. That's the only thing I could figure. And again, I don't know how much George R.R. Martin is involved with this. It seems like he is much more involved in this series than he was with Game of Thrones, at least in terms of the credits and everything being talked about. So I'm not sure. Maybe they're having arguments behind the scenes of what is important versus what television people would view as important versus what book people would think. All I know is there's no real explanation that I have for why the show has been like this for 14 episodes. Like it just does not make sense. It breaks all of the rules of screenwriting and television that I have seen and know about. So I don't get it. I personally don't. But that's my thoughts. Anyway.
All right, so moving to the next question. In 3 scenes, we have long.
Oh, do we?
Both. I might have missed a walk. I don't know.
Sorry.
Both Rhaenyra's walk to meet Alicent and Daemon's walk through the dilapidated Harrenhal, and a totally new character, Ulf, walking to the bar. Were they meaningful storytelling devices to you, or did they feel more like a waste of time? So you're starting us off again.
Yeah. So I am a bit of a sucker for long takes and moving. The more complicated the shot, the better. I don't feel like they were all connected though. Like for Daemon's scene, it took me a minute to feel it was supposed to be spooky. Like we literally just saw that there were guards running scared outside. So I expected to see some people inside and them to not put up a fight, which is what we got. It just took a while. Like in the moment, like I couldn't appreciate that I was supposed to feel spooked out, which darn it, filmmakers, what are you doing? Like for the Rhaenyra's walk, I actually did like it. Outside of all the stupidness that she was there in the first place, the walk itself, like it did feel tense, and it was actually a good contrast, I think, to Daemon, since she was surrounded by people, and she didn't have her dragon sitting on the roof as backup. Like it was a gutsy move. The thing is I knew nothing would happen since she's literally the main character of the whole show, but it still felt kind of tense. Like good job there, for that. But like the new character, I felt the walking was just to show us a nice tour of the area and the debauchery, and like the low. I like the lower level of people talking politics, but like I didn't feel like it was a good introduction of an important character at all, especially like one of these like dragon seed people. Like it should have been taken seriously. It's really the only thing important about Bloodlines is being able to ride dragons. And we saw in the first show how much of a big deal everyone made it out to be a bastard, in the original series. Like, and that was even with people who weren't dragon riders. Like, I would like to have had more talks about the importance of bastards in this feud before meeting one who might be important.
Yeah, I mean, while I appreciated the potential meaning they could have, in the context of the episode, it felt more like a time drain. Like, why? The anticipation wasn't there. There wasn't enough build-up to take Harrenhal for me to be on edge of my seat about what will happen when Daemon goes by himself to do it. When Mysaria reassures Rhaenyra that no one will pay her attention if she is simply in a different outfit, felt like a huge cop-out to me, and signaled to me she would have no problem sneaking in to see Alicent. The only reason that walk should have been that long was to have her run into real trouble that was thwarted by her ever-vigilant crew in brilliant ways. Instead, it, of course, happens exactly as Miss Arya says. And then with Ulf, if this was a brand new show and we open on this character, that would have been fun, and I would be interested in following what his life story is and all that. But it feels really out of place to me in the middle of the show. It's like an odd commercial break for maybe a crack at a spinoff. I wasn't feeling it.
I like that. A spinoff.
Yeah.
Based on that character. That's pretty good. Yeah, complete waste of time. I mean, I guess it could be argued, you want a few false scares to throw off the audience from just knowing something bad is going to happen, so you can shock them later. And that's similar to what's done in the horror movies and thrillers, and Sesh talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Very common, very trope, by the book, but it serves a purpose. But 3 of them in a single episode with nothing actually happening. It's sort of like the director saw Cary Fukunaga's 6-minute one-shot masterpiece in True Detective season 1 and was so inspired. She was like, yeah, let's cut that into 3 one-shots, except it'll just be people walking around. And
literally nothing happens.
Nothing. There's no dialogue. It's just slow walking. Wasn't there a video game based off of that? Or just walking around for like hours on end? Yeah. And as for Ulf, you're going to just drop yet another undeveloped character in this episode and feature him in that bizarre brothel transition and follow him around for seemingly no reason whatsoever. I mean, yes, it seems obvious he works for Miss Arya, but there are plenty of ways you could incorporate that kind of spy character without wasting 2 minutes of the audience's time. You're right. It felt like a commercial break in the middle of the episode that had nothing to do with anything, but was trying to sell you on visiting your local brothel. So,
that's the spin-off we want. The brothel house.
Apparently. So just bizarre choices. I mean, maybe this episode was running 7 minutes short, and the director is like, I can't fit in a full fight scene, so maybe if I get some beautiful shots, the audience won't focus on how poor the script is.
Hold my beer.
All right. Our next question of the evening is, was Rhaenyra's choice to walk into Westeros and face Alicent a smart one? Just because the White Worm told her not to worry, she could have easily been recognized and killed. So I guess I'll start because I was leading
right into it.
In reality, I believe she would have been killed immediately. No, I think a smarter plan would have been to send a decoy to show Alicent how they can easily get to her, but prove they also don't want to hurt her. If she is interested at all in peace, meet in a neutral spot where both have their own protection or at least are isolated enough to not have eyes on them. It felt super naive of her and beyond the realm of realistic. It just felt too easy of a solution to get them together to share the important information needed.
Yeah. This is an example of plot armor protecting a character. It was such a long shot, not just the walking, but even if they both believed that neither had done the most recent escalations with the child murder and assassination attempts, there was still a lot else going on that made this move incredibly dangerous. Unless, of course, you have the plot armor. This was definitely, it was like this could have been a Raven. It just could have been a Raven. We just saw that it was a bad move for Aegon to leave the castle, but it's cool for her when they're both #1 enemy to the other side. I also see that the women are being ignored and the men are taking the actions without the women and they're being ignored during the meetings. How would Alicent even convince them to stop fighting? Like, how would Rhaenyra do that? Like, really, like, she went there with the idea to get her to go bend the knee. Does that seem like that was going to happen at any time? Like, I don't feel like this was a smart move, despite the intentions being good. And I like the writing that they, had the moment to both realize that each side hasn't been as wicked as it seems on surface level. But this was, I mean, just both of them have had their moments where they're just like drunk on dumb juice, like.
Oh.
Like, this is like, what is going on here? And like, I was also going into the scene frustrated. I wish she would utilize Rhaenys more, because she is great. She's maybe like the only character I actually like in this show. Like, where's her seat on the council? Why doesn't anyone ask her to go, write a well-written letter to send that raven to Allison? Like, she's just so underutilized. So I went in immediately frustrated. Like, whoa, I don't think like that's what Rhaenys was talking about. Like, going and meeting her in person. Like, nope. She probably meant send a raven.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this a little bit more later, but to be honest, like, while Rhaenys is a good character, I think they're almost using her as a crutch in a lot of scenes. Like the last several episodes, whenever they need to make a point, it's like, okay, Rhaenys, go and say the point, and then it's repeat, which again, strange. Like, but it's sort of like, this is our takeaway, and it's the same thing where they keep saying that the women in the show are being over basically over talked, or they're being iced out by the men in this show. But at the same time, like, even though they say it a lot, I think they do need to do a better job of showing it in certain ways. Like, for example, if in the small council meeting, Rhaenyra is going ahead and saying her opinion, and all of a sudden one of the other council members just starts talking over her and saying what they're going to do. And same thing for Alicent. I think, yes, it is, you just don't see it enough where like one of those show it instead of say it. But to back to the question, because I guess I have to answer those. It's, for me, as far as I'm concerned, it was smashingly brilliant. Basically, you have Rhaenyra. She hasn't made a military decision in 3 months now, according to her timeline, or a few weeks based on the King's Landing timeline that Rhaenyra has spoken about. Not Rhaenyra, I'm getting confused. They're all the names. Where Alicent has spoken about, and the writers still haven't seemed to figure out this discrepancy either yet. So, you have Rhaenyra's small council, which is practically on the verge of a coup or disassembling due to lack of command. Like, they have hinted at that. They have showed it several times. Like, this is it. They are getting so overly frustrated with her not saying anything. And it isn't even like explaining her reasoning. She just walks away. Like, that's what she does. They ask her a question, and then she's like, I have said this. And then she walks away. That's the whole... Anyway, one point, because I'm starting to lose it. But... So she decides on her own to just sneak off to King's Landing by herself, under the assumption nobody will notice her, and that she won't be killed on sight because the former King's Landing spy, who just so happened to luckily find her way to you, told you to? Yeah, makes perfect sense. Considering how fraught her control is over the council members who have supported her claim, I mean, this should be beyond the final straw. And Rhaenyra, even if she were to make it back without being killed, she should arrive, quite frankly, to a completely empty Dragonstone. Like, how can you support someone who takes no action whatsoever and doesn't keep you in the loop? They can't view Rhaenyra as a viable leader anymore. I mean, if you look at what's going on, she's basically done nothing. Like, things are getting worse. Like, war is where it is. What happens if just everybody just stops supporting Rhaenyra's claim because they're like, she's a feckless leader?
Yep.
all of a sudden, no war solved everybody's problems.
Ooh, harsh truths.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our next question of the evening is, were the resolution of problems a little too easy in this episode? For example, convincing Aegon not to fly his dragon out to war, Daemon taking Harrenhal, Rhaenyra meeting Alicent, etc. Why don't you give us a go?
Keep your momentum.
I feel like I've talked a lot this episode. Not only were they far too easy, the two of them to me were just completely nonsensical. Aegon all of a sudden is no longer furious and wanting vengeance, but instead happy-go-lucky. Rhaenyra, who can't make any decision and mourning the killing of her son and who has no love lost for Alicent, who backstabbed her, suddenly has feelings for her and sees her as a voice of reason enough to meet her in person because Rhaena said to? The Daemon taking Harrenhal, I do actually accept, because you basically have a fortress that can house entire garrisons to launch devastating attacks from that seems to have immense military value, only to see it as a burnt-down, decrepit castle in utter disrepair, manned by nobody. I mean, I like this one because it parallels the idea that these two sides are basically fighting over a once strong and formidable place that's been reduced to a broken-down shadow of what it once was. So, thumbs up on that one, I guess. So one out of 3 ain't bad. Better than 0.
It's positive.
Yeah.
So for me, yes, and no. Everything was too easy. Harrenhal was easy on purpose, but still didn't feel impactful. Convincing Aegon was also easy on purpose, as he didn't really want to go. Just wanted to look like he wanted to go. That wasn't so bad for me, as I said earlier. Finally, Rhaenyra meeting Alicent and her realization that she was wrong all this time, I did think was done well. I mean, the tragedy of both of their situations and the kinship they still feel for each other felt full circle. I did like that they met back up at the location that they had their most meaningful conversations. But it served to show that in this realm, women unfortunately hold zero power. They had no control over what path their fathers put them on. No matter what the truth is, war will rage on because men will get what they want. A sad, disempowering message to all the ladies out there. I did appreciate how this scene was done and how it showed how both women were open to seeing what the truth of things really were. That was refreshing. But when egos flare and children are murdered, it's harder and harder to allow oneself to see what the reality of things is. It was satisfying seeing Alicent understand she was wrong, yet in a way it was too satisfying. Most good dramas show how tragically a character is unable or unwilling to see the truth, and they make further errors and go deeper into their character flaws. This is more of a, oh, well, it is what it is kind of answer, and it unfortunately lets the air, even more air out of the drama that should be soaring like a little hot air balloon.
Oh. Yeah, that was something that should have been saved closer to the end of either of their lives. Like, oh no, my last however many years or however long this goes was a mistake. Whatever. But yeah, this is things being resolved too easily is absolutely something that has happened here. Like, once again, things were self-contained in one episode. Tension rises and is resolved within the same episode. Like, what if Rhaenyra and Rhaenys talked about having a discussion in person with Alicent? Ooh, how dangerous that would be. And then next episode, we get to see that. And it being like a difficult journey, maybe. Like, even though I liked it, like it's just as another example, like it could have been built up with more tension, like way better. Like, if this were Tyrion's trial from the first series, the trial and the trial by combat would have like just taken place in the same episode. Like, Daemon taking Harrenhal was okay to me, to be easier than expected. Like, I feel, especially since like we didn't know what he was really up to until he was there. And then everyone ran away. Like, obviously, cool. They ran. That's it. That's all we need to see. No challenge. Like, for Aegon, I felt like it was just an idea, and an idea that would, maybe we'll see come up again, or thought we were going to see come up again. But I think Laris was able to squash it very effectively, even though it's like, no, this was a rumor. It wasn't your idea to go in the first place. Ha ha ha. Like, I hope that we see this seed of paranoia for Aegon at least. But like, I wouldn't put my money on that though.
Yeah, if this was Tyrion's trial, they would have said 4 times in the episode how it's going to be a crazy and fierce trial by combat. They'd have
eye-popping.
They'd have the judge go ahead and basically say, yes, you're guilty, and then they'd say, okay, trial by combat, and then you'd be left just seeing a crushed skull of Oberyn.
That is how they would do it. You're right.
Yeah. All same episode, and at the end of the episode, Tyrion would escape from the cell.
You're right. Yeah, it would have been that whole arc, literally in one episode, with a lot of the action cut out and a lot of the character cut out. He would not have had his speech.
Well, now we have made it to ratings, and would you continue watching? Sesh, what your opinion is?
You can't make me.
I mean, again, this is what we do here. I mean, if this was a one-off episode, I kind of liked it in ways. Like, I liked a lot of the scenes as standalone scenes. Like, they were done well for what they were. Like, I really enjoyed seeing Cole and company gallop away from a dragon, for example. Like, I really enjoyed a lot of the interactions that happen. Like, I love, I do love everything Rhaenys and like what she says and conveys. She's the only character that seems smart to me at all. Like, I like that Aegon was a jerk to his little brother and finding him in the brothel. Like, I was like, oh, this is a lot going on in this scene. Get rid of the new character, and that interaction alone was fine. Like, there was a lot that could come of that. Like, I really love that Alicent realized that she made the biggest, most embarrassing mistake while Rhaenyra gets some clarification that, like, her ex-friend has just been a bozo and is far more stupider than she thought she could have imagined. Like, this is the misunderstanding of her life. And I actually found it comical. Like, the looks on their faces were perfect. They were so perfect. They were funny. Like, the actress did great. Like, she is thinking, oh no, I made a big mistake. And I enjoyed being able to see that. That moment was solid for me. There are moments in this episode that work, but not as a whole. And again, it's so self-contained, and none of them are going to be more than looking back on just like that plot point that plot point step that was taken. That's really it. I'm giving this a 5.5 for a collection of a lot of little things, standalone things that were done all right. Like, it easily could have risen the stakes more for future episodes, but watching this show and knowing that this is what I'm getting, it met my expectations. It's not gonna get better. So, as the kids say, it was mid.
I think I saw Jonathan's soul leave his body when he gave it.
I say, like, oh, I like it, because it's great for this show, which means it was mid.
By the way, and then we can hear Maria's ranking. I actually think that brothel scene could have made sense if they did it 2 episodes ago, and they did it before Aegon's son died.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, things might make a little more sense. Like, say, him and Aemon do have a falling out, and then his son dies, and then Larys comes in and says, hey, Aemon wants to make a play for your throne. And you have in that episode two episodes ago, similarly, that maybe him and his mom start bickering and arguing. All of a sudden, that would actually make sense, that Larys argument. But because of the sequence in which they showed this,
that's way better.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah,
that is way better. Absolutely. That makes so much more sense. That would be good. That'd actually make the scene very good. And you don't even need to introduce the other character, just these 2 brothers interacting.
Right.
Agreed. Yeah, that was very smart.
Yeah.
I thought this episode had distant echoes of Game of Thrones. It made me daydream of wispy memories of days gone by. But the only time I felt really engaged was toward the end when Rhaenyra and Alicent had their reunion. I actually liked this episode overall more than the last few. Well, stay upright. It a 6 for the effort it put into expanding the world. However, I think it has fundamental flaws that can no longer be corrected at this point, which is sad. I'd be surprised if future episodes change my tune on that one.
Ooh, agreed there.
6.
It's like compared to the last 2 episodes. You know what I'm saying? Not compared to other.
Not compared to The
anything else.
Watchmen.
Not compared to any of that.
No, definitely not other shows. At best, we could compare this just
Bar is
to the
compared
previous season.
to
Show.
these episodes, yes. That help a little bit?
Not really, because that sliding scale on that bar is so small that I don't know what a 0 to a 10 is. But
we should figure that out at the end of this. Our favorite and our least favorite episodes.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, before I give my rating,
Oh boy.
I have been pretty harsh this episode,
Mm.
and I have said this on here before. I do not like giving bad reviews. I really, really, really don't. If you look at most of the shows that we have watched and the episodes we have watched, my reviews have been pretty positive, like remarkably positive. This show, I mean, it's killing me. I mean, listen, screenwriters, they put in a ton of time and effort into their craft, and I do not enjoy dumping on someone for something they worked so hard on. I really don't. But from a critical standpoint, as far as I'm concerned, I thought this episode was a complete dumpster fire with some of the worst writing, character continuity, disjointedness, pacing, and transitions. And that's each one of those individually of any episode in the Game of Thrones franchise. I've talked about it at length in my previous responses, but I don't know how the script was accepted and greenlit, as it breaks pretty much every single rule for screenwriters. And not in one of those arguably brilliant, unique, creative ways where somebody takes a big chance and okay, it doesn't align with anything. People hate it because it doesn't follow the format. But at least they're trying. I mean, this is so milquetoast with so little payoff, with so little character development. I just don't even remotely understand what the showrunners and writers are trying to do with an episode like this. But I do know that I honestly hated almost every single moment I was watching this. There were a couple moments where not. There was the beginning that I said where I thought it was building to a battle. It didn't. There was the dream sequence of Daemon, which I thought, oh, this might actually be interesting. Maybe we'll find out more about the supernatural stuff. Can't be worse than the rest of the show. And
DVD.
in the end, you know, I did like the actresses in terms of how they portrayed Alicent and Rhaenyra at the end. I thought they did a really good job. But outside of that, it's I mean, I didn't see the point at all of this episode. I don't think it added anything. I don't think it introduced anything new. I don't think it led to anything or was even remotely important in the least. And, you know, I promised this episode an extra point for the fun changes to the embroidery intro, which I thought was really fun. I had never seen decapitation embroidered, which was fun. But that's pretty much all it's getting from me. So for me, this episode is a 2 out of 10. That's with the +1. It was an utter F to me in almost every aspect imaginable. And in my opinion, it was by far the worst episode in what has been a very underwhelming series. And those were my thoughts. Send me hate mail. It is intern@intern.com.
Man, that was the final straw for you.
He
almost didn't show up to the chair.
I will tell you, I think we have fun here, and I enjoy putting time into this. I know everybody here enjoys putting the time into it. I was not having much enjoyment putting this one together. I mean, it was hard. This episode was hard on me, and not because it had like all the ridiculous Game of Thrones stuff that I haven't liked in the past, where it just does something completely graphic. Hilariously, that was like the full frontal nudity. That didn't even faze me in this episode.
Well, at that point, yeah. I mean, the opening of the scene's like hilarious. Like, that's like the funniest way to just open a scene. Like, oh, thank you for the giant prosthetic. That is a lot.
It was a prosthetic. I wasn't looking all that carefully. My eyes had already.
Well, no, the other one, the close up with the mouth. Yeah, that. I was like, oh, what? Where are we? This is back to old HBO. What is this?
Oh man, yeah. So I'm sorry, viewing audience. I did not appreciate this episode. I'll be back. I promise. Sort of.
I will say it's okay to just actually give up. I've been so generous with the ratings, but I feel like I've given up a while ago on this. I had a little bit of hope towards the end of the last season, but we're right back where like, the first few episodes of the first season. It's like, this is bad. This is bad, guys. It's kind of not so good. I'm seeing more consistent characters in like reality TV. Like this is not good.
Yeah, well, you've heard it here, folks. We might be throwing in the towel.
No, we have to hate watch now. It's just going to get better in that direction.
We have to add negative ratings. -0, -1.
We might hit a 0, y'all.
If we start handing out Razzies per episode, we can, but that just seems mean-spirited. I although not like anything I said this episode couldn't be taken as mean-spirited. So I mean, we'll discuss, and by we'll discuss I mean you two will discuss. I'm the intern here, but my vote is we probably need to close out the season because.
Yeah.
No. Ooh, interesting.
Whoa! I was gonna say let's hate watch. Nobody's hating on this enough.
Yeah, we might have to talk about this then. All right. Well, this may or may not be the final episode of House of the Dragon. Anything else to tell our loyal and inspiring fans?
Ooh. No.
And on that note,
this time.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening and watching until the very end to allow us to get our rants fully out of our system. We really do appreciate all your support. I'm being completely honest about that. And hopefully we brought, I don't know if there was much intelligent conversation in this episode. Hopefully
we have past episodes where there is.
Yeah.
Other shows that are great.
Yeah, hopefully you've seen previous episodes that did feature intelligent conversation and laughs.
The Watchmen is a great show.
Oh yeah,
it was so good, y'all. So good.
Yeah, we might have to
Witcher. Witcher was great. Let's rewatch that.
we do need to go back to The Witcher. We stopped midway and then things happened. But thank you everybody. Sorry that this was not an optimistic, happy episode. I would love to give you that, believe me. I like watching shows that I like watching. I did not enjoy this very much. So, if you like this show, I don't know.
Our show, not that show.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you liked our show, and I understand this is going on a limb a little bit for this one, but if you did like this show, please share, subscribe, heart. The share part, maybe our Watchmen episode. But if you hated the show, whether our show or House of the Dragons episode 3, please make sure to like this episode twice, as that will allow us to forward those ratings to House of the Dragon, such that maybe they can make some changes. Our next episode will be on Tuesday, July 9th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Will it be House of the Dragon? Will it be a mystery show? So, looking forward to seeing you then. And until next time, could you do it better? Bum, 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 bum. All right, bye, guys.